This, so, really kind of unapologetically, this is our newest grandson, Nathaniel, and I thought I have to put him up there, really. It doesn't even matter what I think, because I have done that with the other 4 grandchildren and said this is a big event in my life, and it's also where I find a lot of joy. And it also will come back as part of my report in a little while, because to talk about what the future looks like for ones like this, you can caption this, but I think what he's saying is, don't just stand there, Opa, give me the car keys. Or at least one day he will be. Born to our son Isaac and his wife Lauren, who are now in Durham and doing well. If we could, next slide, there we go. I call this one Darth Bishop, but some of you understand that, you've been through this kind of thing. You notice that this service is outdoors with a mask, with a face shield, but what you can't see is with tongs to distribute, the communion elements and either that or prepackaged things. And I know that you have been through all those sorts of things in various forms or fashions, and we know quite naturally that those have been those issues around whatever protocols have been during COVID. It's defined so much of who we are. I mean, it's like every third sentence that we talk about. We were doing this, and we had this going, and we planned this, and then there was a pandemic. And and so I'm not belittling that at all or making light of it. It's a big deal, and we've noticed that because of that, both in congregations. Not all, certainly, but in our rostered ministers and in our other congregational lay leaders, that really anxiety, it seems, and maybe, I don't know what the right word is, an appropriate kind of sociological or psychological assessment, but I would say the squirrely factor is just like through the roof, 3 times higher than what we've ever seen. And it's caused some real, and it's not just, those things. But yeah, next slide, please. A big part of 2021 was having a bishop election and taking to Synod Council during that same time as part of my discernment, not just would I maybe be available in 2021 to be a bishop, but I did guarantee the Synod Council and the staff that regardless of whether I was elected or someone else, that we would have a bishop transition. We would not do things exactly the same, and part of that was a lot of time initiated by the staff and then with the Synod Council and so on, and a pretty substantial reorganization, not just the people who retired and left, because we knew that that was coming for a few of our staff people, but also within the staff and the people on the staff not doing the same things in many cases that they once did. So that has been reorganized a good bit. I just wanted to, because this is Rick Godby. These folks left in December. So used to be our communications guy. Most of you probably never saw him. He was behind the scenes kind of a guy, tech guy, and so we thank Rick. Next slide, please. This is where did she go? Whoa, ho! That's the way she always is, just popping in and popping out. You never know where she is. She's ubiquitous. That's why you popped it 3 times, because she's probably in 3 places right now. Sandra Klein, our call process coordinator for the first term, and I'm immensely grateful to Sandra for those years, especially as I dial it back to when I first started and had no clue what a bishop really did and didn't really know anybody, and realizing that a call process, and Sandra, of course, knows everybody, and so we give thanks for Sandra, who also retired in December. And next one, please. And Kathy Muth, which again, a lot of you didn't see Kathy real often, but was the bishop's admin assistant for the last few years of Bishop Leonard's tenure there, and then also with me. And Kathy, just such a wonderful effervescent and encouraging and efficient person in our office, who always kept us honest with our language and churchy talk, reminding us, I'm a Southern Baptist, and I'm like, okay, so we do have different words. And so I'm grateful for Kathy. And can I go ahead and say, let's thank those three? We had celebrations and Godspeeds for them, within our staff, and we streamed them and recorded them and all that kind of thing. But we really miss those folks. And then you see this person who, like 2 weeks after we approved the Synod reorg in our December council meeting of 2021, and we worked with our new hires, and we had all of the situation in place. And I'm not busting on anybody, but then Tammy Jones-West told me that she was going to retire after 25 years, and that was not part of the plan, but we certainly honor that. We all have gone through some journeys, and it's not a contest, but my gracious, Tammy's journey, as many of you know, has really been both wonderful and just really fraught with a lot of struggle and changes, just a whole bunch of changes right at once. And the church is changing at the same time, and the Synod's changing at the same time and everything. And been here for 25 years on the Synod staff. Like I mentioned before with Greg Williams and Leonard Bullock and many others, Tammy, I think, wins the prize of failing at retirement because she was already not retired before she was gone. Really, but graciously, Tammy was willing to, because of this Synod gathering that we had missed in 2020 and that we really felt like we needed to be together and had been in the front end, because something like this you have to plan way out. And not a lot of people have gifts, including me, for event planning and organizing all of that. And so Tammy agreed, probably with some regret later, to be our sort of contracted Synod gathering person, and we will recognize Tammy in one of our worship service with official Godspeed. But for now, on more of a logistical level, and just thank you, Tammy, and thank you for saying yes to the church-wide organization in one of several things where the wheels have been coming off to say, I'll do that too, because a lot of our folks participate in that, and so you're still ours. You'll never get away, but we love you, Tammy. Let's say thank you. Yeah, we will bring her up front for the worship service today for farewell and Godspeed and so on. So we will get a chance for Tammy to come up here, and she's also going to be in front of you to do some of the stuff she's doing right now for the gathering. So when we say gathering, poor Tammy, we've been confused on the staff, so we know you have. Is this the youth gathering or the Synod gathering we're talking? And it's the same person in charge of each. So anyway. Next slide, please. Allow me to talk about some numbers. It's maybe the easiest way to get at what I want to talk about. Next slide. This is the number 27. I did this report. I wrote it really about a week ago. And at the time, really between April 27th and May 27th, we were aware in the Synod office of 27 of our rostered ministers in the North Carolina Synod who contracted COVID. 27. I have learned of 6 more since then, and the most we had ever been aware of in any given month during the entire 27 months of this pandemic is 7. And so now we have 33. And part of why our numbers are what they are now is we're even though it's out of the news, and I think we've all somewhat accepted that this is the world we live in, it's a big deal now. One of the real clarities about why that is so, I know because I go to places and I'm usually the only person with a mask on in the entire place, and there are basically no protocols. I'm not busting anybody. I really do get it. And many people are vaccinated. The great news of this number is that so far as we know, there's nobody been hospitalized or even real severely ill, but some of them do have what they call long COVID and are suffering from some pretty long-term effects of that, some of the ones who have gotten that. So just as my grandmother used to say, y'all be careful out there. So please do, and be aware that it's not entirely unlikely that we will maybe come back to making some Synod recommendations, though we also realize that increasingly folks maybe aren't quite paying so much attention to that, because like I said, we're sort of corporately done with that. Next slide, please. So this is the largest number of congregational outbreak people who have COVID that we know during the month of May. I'm aware of 4 where more than a dozen people in one congregational event got COVID, but all 4 of the biggest outbreaks in congregations of the North Carolina Synod that we're aware of have happened during the month of May, April and May, in 2022. 53 in one congregation that we're aware of. Next slide, please. 21 is the number of our rostered ministers who have resigned from their calls or have been removed from their calls apart from their will since the beginning of 2021. As a point of reference, in a normal pre-COVID environment, the most we've ever had in an 18-month period of those to happen is 4. 21. So you can see our environment is an environment of rapid change, and the great resignation that you read about in the general culture is affecting the life of our church as well. Again, I don't need you to panic about this. I'm not exactly panicked about it. It's not happening in most of our congregations and in most of our rostered ministers that they're to the point of resignation, but I do know of quite a number more who would resign and leave their call if financially they could afford to do so, which might be true in any job at any given time. But you know, that the morale level, just like if you were a teacher or a healthcare worker or almost any other kind of a position, things are not all rosy right now in that way. Next slide, please. We don't know scientifically, but I have been talking to almost every clergy person I know and have contact with, and we're back out traveling and doing a lot. A lot of congregations have different numbers, but it seems like a pretty good average is that we're at about, in most of our congregations, 70% of in-person worship attendance compared to where we were in February of 2020. Now, granted, some folks have moved online, and there's some real vibrant ministries. Some congregations are way more than that. Some congregations are way less than that, including closure. But this seems to be kind of standard of where congregations seem to be. We don't have enough time under our belt to understand, is that sort of where we're going to be? But it seems perhaps that we've sort of settled into that's what we are, and let's figure out how to move forward, online presence, all of those sorts of things that we talk about. So next slide, please. This is a piece of good news. Over $680,000 the North Carolina Synod Council has dispersed during this pandemic to congregations and rostered ministers from the COVID Relief Fund. Where did that fund come from? Well, due to the shoulders on which we stand of people from a long time ago and more recently serving in this synod, and the mission support that you have given that we talk about all the time, we have built up some reserves. Let's be honest and frank about it, that for the last few years, the stock market has been kind to us. That seems to be maybe in a different turn at this moment, but because a good bit of our money was invested in things, we have had reserves and other monies to set aside to help our congregations, even with something relatively small, like an owl. How many owls have we helped congregations purchase? If you don't know what an owl is, you set it in the middle of the table, and then somebody can join your live in-person meeting on Zoom or something, and they can see who's talking, and it's pretty seamless as opposed to just sitting a telephone, in the middle of the table in a plastic cup, to sort of amplify it, which I've done before, which is why Daniel's laughing at me, but. Hey, I'm almost 63, so okay. Next slide, please. I do want to just kind of lift, there's a lot of words on here, but I want you to know that, the Lifeline Fund was something, again, for people new to the Synod, or if you've not heard of it, it was something that came from a Lilly grant that somewhat fell in our lap. It's something that I filled out the application for in September of 2015, which meant I had been a bishop for exactly 6 weeks. And they asked, would you like to, with Rocky Mountain Synod, partner and share to get this maybe $1 million to help your rostered ministers with education debt? And all you have to do in order to get this $500,000 is raise matching funds for it. And we said, yes, please. And so we did. So we're grateful to the Lilly Foundation, but also the fundraising for this fund has been amazing. Congregations, congregational endowments, individuals, so many of you have helped with this. And in the second phase, we could help with lots of things. First phase, we could help with actually lots and lots of things like credit card debt and all sorts of things. The second phase was all education debt relief, and $331,000 plus that grants that were given. And those grants were able to completely, wipe out the debt of 21 of our rostered ministers. And I don't know if you understand how life-giving that is for someone. So, and we have 30 active applicants right now whose combined debt is over $2 million. And so it is, so next slide, please. We're continuing to address this. John Mako and Carolyn Mako, as administrative assistant for him, are helping administer this fund. David Sloop is doing a phenomenal job. Note to self, if I need to raise money, find David Sloop. But it's also the cause that David is working for, because I think people want to help. And that should be a real affirmation, even for rostered ministers who maybe haven't applied or haven't received money from this. And if you're new to the Synod and don't know about this and you have education debt, talk to us. We believe that we can help. It's not entirely a freebie. We require some things to be done, like some financial planning and management that are not just the gift that's up front, but are going to help things be in such a way that we're able to be financially more free and hopeful for all of our rostered ministers. 13 of our applicants are being coached. We provide free coaching for folks who are in the program. And congregations are being invited to help maybe with some of the elimination of their own pastor, or helping catch up a little bit or raise the percentage, 1 or 2% of what they contribute to the pension fund. The difference between 10% contribution per year and 12% contribution per year, if you start when you're 30 years old, by the time you're my age, is phenomenal how much the difference is. So if congregations can just bump that one little bit over time, it helps a lot. Next slide. The last phase was one that we did not expect at all from Lilly, but very appropriately and graciously from them came in the wake of so many of the revelations during this pandemic we've had of the racial inequities that have always been around, but it's just cycles around and comes to light, and we always hope and try for this not to be, something that, okay, this is the issue of the month, and then we're moving on to something else. But Lilly said what they had decided across denominations. This isn't just for Lutherans. This is for Jewish people and Muslim people and Baptist people and Seventh-day Adventists and any religious group, that this fund, when we have pastors, deacons, ordained people of color in all of those denominations, almost without fail. It's taking them twice or more than twice as long to get a call than a white person. They're generally making substantially less money than a comparable aged white person is, and their pension contributions and education debt. Pension contributions lower, education debt higher. And that has been true in the North Carolina Synod. So we were invited as one of the synods who Lily says did a good job with this to help with a pilot program specifically for rostered ministers of color in the North Carolina Synod to have a small grant. We could have gotten $120,000, which would have been substantial. We chose, as a Synod Council, instead to share that money with all of Region 9 so that every region could, because it is about the money, but it's also about the gesture of saying we see you and we're with you in this difficulty, our ministers of color. After a lot of talking with people, people didn't need the same thing. Some people said, put it all in my pension fund. My pension fund is horribly low. Or put it all toward my education debt. Or put it all toward my credit card. Really, thank you, but my credit card debt's what I really need to, or whatever. And so really for the first time, we didn't make the payment directly to anybody, but we're making the payment to say, you put this where you believe that you need it. It's not just a drop in the bucket of something somebody might refer to as a reparation kind of a thing, but it is a step in the right direction to say that we need to do some intentional work toward being better at what we espouse as our core values. Let's move to the next slide. I'm not going to say a ton about this because it was mentioned by Pastor Sarah Cutter yesterday. We have sent out emails. We will send out more. Our siblings in Sierra Pacific Synod are meeting right now in assembly like we are. Bishop Eaton and Vice President Carlos Pena are with them. It is a tumultuous time in the life of the church, again, around how our systems affect rostered ministers of color, how our processes of discipline do. Certainly it's about racism. From my perspective, in terms of what do we do, part of the problem, maybe the core of the problem, other than the issue of racism itself, which we know is both individual and in systems, and privilege is something that we don't even kind of by definition know that we have. And I say we because I'm probably as much a privileged person or more than anybody else in this room. I do know that. But I still don't know what I don't know, right? So how are our systems of accountability, including discipline, need to be revamped and changed? And I believe that they do, even before all the things in Sierra Pacific Synod, but so much more now. There is no way right now in any of our governing documents of this church that a synod is accountable to anyone for anything. A synod council is not. Rostered ministers are, congregations are, we have processes, but a synod, and since a synod holds the key to who's on the roster and who's not, if racism is baked in, do you see where I'm going with this? I mean, even unwittingly in a system of privilege and racism, who suffers the brunt of that process, right? I mean, it becomes our siblings of color. And so we need to change some of that. Structure and policy. That's kind of dry, but I'm going to ask you to scoot on to the next slide, please. Okay, I want you to just look at this for a minute. This is an actual ad that was run 3 days before the shooting in Uvalde, Texas, at Robb Elementary School, by the manufacturer of the guns that the shooter used. The voiceover that went with this picture on the ad quoted the book of Proverbs, saying, "Raise up a child in the way that he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it." Daniel Defense is the name of the company that manufactures that weapon. Is this okay? I mean, I understand. I mean, one of the things they taught us in Conference of Bishops was not to talk about this issue because it's too divisive and it will split the church. But I think we may be already past that point on many things. If the ELCA has, with its even sometimes good intentions, made an idol out of policies and constitutions and structures, how much more have we made an idol out of the Second Amendment? I'm going there, people. How much have we... So we have not made any decision on a gun legislation or reform as a Synod council or anything else right now, though we have brought it up. And last time we were together in Synod Assembly 3 years ago, we had a workshop on gun reform that we talked about. But I am personally, I have to go there, because your children, your grandchildren, your parishioners are too precious to be sacrificed on the altar of that idol. The idol of anybody can buy an assault rifle and hundreds or thousands of rounds of ammo on their 18th birthday, even though they can't buy a beer for 3 more years because they're not responsible enough. It is madness, is all that it is. It's not Republican or Democrat. It's just plain old way of Jesus. I mean, Jesus told Peter, put the weapon down. Put the weapon down. That's not how we do it. And then folks will say, well, yeah, but then they'll kill you. Yeah, they will. But like NBA coach Steve Kerr, I'm sick of laments and thoughts and prayers. I just am. It doesn't mean I'm not going to be with thoughts and prayers, because those are going to be important too. But, I'm sick of everybody's rights when followers of Jesus need to be doing the right thing. That's... My grandchildren are getting to know, they ask poignant questions. I know your children do, Michael and Danielle. I mean, children are, they're aware. They ask the questions, and ours are getting to the point, our 6-year-olds, where they haven't asked me yet, but they're gonna. Opa, why doesn't your church help stop children from getting killed at my school? Or black people in grocery stores? Or at a medical center in Tulsa? Or at a federal housing project in Hickory last night, where 3 people were killed in a gunfight? And I'll be damned if I'm supposed to tell them, because some people might leave our church if we talk about that. Just an I statement. I'm letting you know. I'm not saying you shouldn't have a gun. Maybe people think that. I'm not. But I'm just saying the automatic assault type weapons, here's the slide. It says something. We need to do something. And advocacy has always been part of our tradition. It just simply means to give voice to. I understand to give voice to the right that we have and how much we treasure that. But who gives voice to the children? All of these things. I've said probably more than enough. I'm just letting you know that I apologize in advance if I hurt your church by what I'm going to say. just wanted to let you know, because you may have heard something like Synod administration. That's a thing. And so in Synod administration, that you can either be asked the Synod Council to do or that for you, where if you get to the point, often it's because you're small or can't take care of your property or can't govern yourself, you can't meet the parameters of your constitution. We historically have not done that much in North Carolina Synod, but we had, I think these numbers are right, Michael, 5 congregations that asked us to, and then the 6th one didn't want us to, but we did because for various reasons. And please understand, we don't really want to administer your congregation. We want to do things that we can do for the sake of the gospel, but sometimes our congregations might even be hurting other ministries by the way that they're consistently acting and might be doing some things, and we're trying to help as a Synod Council, and so our structure might change a little bit too if that continues to be a thing. But it is in our Constitution, and so if anybody brings it up, yes, it is true, and yes, we're doing that some. It probably will be very rare that involuntarily someone goes under administration, but if a place houses one of our mission congregations, and we put, for instance, $500,000 in there, and then the 4 people left want to kick the mission congregation out after we fixed up the property, we might say, no you didn't, which maybe theoretically could be what happened. Next one, please. And this is really where I want to focus a good bit. I'm going to go through these quickly because we're going to be talking about this in other ways. But this is about 640 Afghan refugees at the airport in Kabul who have gotten on the biggest transport plane that they had available and are standing up and being taken. Remember those folks that we saw at the airport and said, somebody needs to help those people. And who are we going to blame? And the administration and all that. But we can blame all we want, but when we get to a point, who's going to help these people? That's the Mr. Rogers thing, right? Look for the helpers. We're called to be helpers, right? So this is a big thing. And next slide, please. Oh yeah, and Ukraine. Next slide. I'm going to issue a challenge. We want to issue a challenge. We're calling it the Bishop's Challenge because that's just how we're structured, but it's not just mine. But all congregations in the North Carolina Synod, as you've been looking and watching over and over and over again, all these horror stories and personal vignettes about these Ukrainian refugees and also the Afghan refugees, but most of those are already here in North Carolina who are coming to be settled through LSC. We are asking a majority of our congregations, a super majority of our congregations, to get involved to help us resettle refugees through Lutheran Services Carolinas, which is something we've done for a long, long time, to embrace God's call to welcome the stranger. Next slide. The goal is that we have 70% of our congregations. We have 197 congregations. That would make 138 actively engaged in resettlement over the next 18 months, and almost all of those, but not all, will be Ukrainians. Some of them will still be Afghan or other, Syrian or some other nationality, but most of them will be. And next slide, please. 15,000 refugees resettled through Lutheran Services Carolinas already since early 80s. 750 Afghan refugees resettled by Lutheran Services Carolinas in 2021. I know in Asheville, they were supposed to kind of slowly filter in, and they almost all came at the same time in January. I mean, my goodness, it was kind of overwhelming. Thank you to the ones who have done that. 750 Ukrainian refugees to be resettled in the Carolinas by Lutheran Services Carolinas. Here, next slide, let me show you how it works. Well, the way that the federal government does this is they contract with these agencies like Catholic Services or Church World Service or Lutheran Services Carolina to resettle these folks. The federal government does the vetting. I cannot tell you how many phone calls asking me, what did you do to vet that family you put at our church? Like, nothing. Your federal government does that, and it usually takes a long, long time. But you know, we contracted with them to do the resettling and the welcome. But you have to be within 100 miles of an officially approved resettlement center in order to do that. We already had offices, an office in Raleigh, and then we added an office in Asheville, and then we've applied for an office. Originally it was going to be Charlotte, but we said, ooh, no, Salisbury, because that hits a bigger radius within that 100 miles thing, and then Wilmington, because that gets us, in a big chunk of the east, so that we can resettle these folks. And so almost all of you, but not all of you, are within that 100-mile radius. If you are not, you can partner with a congregation that is, or you can go through Church World Service or another agency. I'm pretty sure that Ukrainian refugee family doesn't care what the name of the organization is that resettles it. So next slide, please. So yeah, you can go with Church World Service. Next slide. Just some scripture reasons about why we would do this. I hope it's clear to you why we would. Always welcoming the stranger has been part of our faith tradition from the beginning. Next slide. Who knows what's wrong with that scriptural reference? Matthew has 28 chapters. This is Matthew 31. No, it's actually Matthew 25, 35. So just to keep you on your toes. Next slide. The ask, all North Carolina Synod invited congregations invited to embrace the gospel call to welcome the stranger. Most of our ancestors, if we were Lutheran, came over as refugees. In fact, all of our folks came over as immigrants unless we are native or African Americans who came over as slaves. That's about the way you got here in your family heritage. You came from somewhere else, or you were native, or you were forced here for a capitalistic purpose. Next slide. What can we do? Join. We've got 3 calls with me and Ted Goins, who you're going to meet in a little bit. Lutheran Services Carolina's president. Start a circle of welcome in your congregation. That's what we'll be helping you understand what that looks like and how to do that. You can also call our Synod office or Lutheran Services Carolina's. You'll learn more about that. Be a partner in the circle of welcome with somebody else. Provide housing. Oh my goodness, especially in our metro areas with housing going up the way that it is. I can't even imagine the headache of being in Asheville with the prices of housing up there and trying to find places for these refugees to be. Hold a Be the Light campaign. Oh yeah, did you get your Be the Light sunglasses? They're available in the Cromer Center, and they asked me this morning if I had them. They say Be the Light right there, and y'all are being the light, and I can't stand the shine. And that's what we're getting ready to do. So, and then share with us your progress and share your stories and encourage each other. Flyers are going to be given to you as you exit the auditorium today. So I'm going to stop because I promised Diana Haywood, they gave me 45 minutes, and since this is not a business assembly, Diana and I aren't alternating like that, but I'm an old white guy, and I said, Diana, look, I want you on the stage, and I want you to just take 10 or 15 minutes to tell us from where you sit and stand and all your leadership experience in the North Carolina Synod, what a gift Diana Haywood is. One of my favorite people of all time.
Thank you. Bishop Smith, in-person attendees, and online attendees. First, as I say to you every year, North Carolina is the place to be. That is my mantra, and I'm sticking with it. I'm glad to be in this Synod and honored to serve as your vice president. It continues to be an opportunity to grow in faith and to learn more about the church. After many years, I am still overwhelmed by what we accomplished together, and I thank God for leading and guiding me as I serve you and the church. Thank you for allowing me this time to share reflections about the work of your Synod Council and our Synod. First, I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge the blessing of committed leaders, all races, all genders, lay and rostered, who serve in congregations, on Synod Council, in the Synod office, on committees, church-wide ministries, and in every area of church life. Many are here. The gifts that you bring, your cooperation and ministry are phenomenal. Thank you. This is the first time that we have gathered for a Synod gathering with no business assembly. It's going beautifully with many, many learning opportunities. When we were last together in person, we gathered around tables and took time to discuss, describe, and embrace who we are as a Synod. We engaged in holy conversations and lifted up and named the substance of our DNA, which are our core values. I hope that some of you were at that assembly. I wanted to make sure you saw them, so we have them right here. These are priorities for the Synod Council and the Synod staff. Just so you hear them, and our core values, we boldly proclaim that we will be Christ-centered, that we will practice generosity, that we will be in relationship, and that we will actively strive for reconciliation. And then all the way down at the bottom, we say, all for the sake of the world. Let's think about that last line, all for the sake of the world. And that ... that ellipsis, meaning obviously understood. All for the sake of the world now seems like it may have been a prediction for the uncertainty that followed that assembly. All for the sake of the world, a world that changed during the past 3 years. Since we were last together in person, our congregations, our church, our leaders, all changed and continue to change. Our vocabulary changed. We all know and understand social distancing. We all know what an N95 is. We learned what PPE is. We've all been in Zoom meetings up to here, and there has been no end to virtual gatherings and celebrations. Hybrid can refer to a car or a way of gathering. Actually, I don't think I had the opportunity to use the word pandemic much before the last 3 years. The mathematician and statistician part of me was heartened that so many became interested in metrics, looking at graphs and charts, and hearing of flattening the curve. We learned new words and how to gather differently while we were apart. And while we learned new terminology in the last 3 years, our old terminology and old realities remain and seem to be amplified. Siblings in Christ, we are still in a nation divided. Racism and privilege are pervasive. Disparities exist. White supremacy seems normalized, and violence persists. We serve in a world where we must be ready to make decisions related to new COVID variants quickly, but where lockdown drills are standard. We serve in a world where we can watch the war in Ukraine on TV, where gun violence remains in the news, where people lose their lives shopping for groceries, a world where children are gunned down during their normal school day. Siblings, the charge to act for the sake of the world during a pandemic, in a changing world, and a world in need is a high bar. For the Senate Council, this meant more meetings, more committee time, more email votes, more unique situations. For the sake of the world meant being in relationship and partnership with congregations to provide them with the resources and support they needed during the stress and uncertainty related to COVID. For the sake of the world has meant starting initiatives and seeking strategies for diversity and inclusion. For the sake of the world has meant speaking to conciliation and reconciliation. For the sake of the world has meant speaking to justice issues. For the sake of the world has meant being present to leaders and pastors. For the sake of the world has meant imagining and reimagining ministry. For the sake of the world means we celebrate the gifts of all. For the sake of the world means creating opportunities to discuss difficult and uncomfortable topics. Bishop Tim, Senate staff, Senate Council, thank you for the decisions made and time spent for the sake of the world, and for speaking with a prophetic voice, even speaking here today for the sake of the world. Pastors, leaders, congregation members, we're all in this together. Let's be church for the sake of the world. My mantra is worth repeating. North Carolina is the place to be. We live with and live out our core values. We live in a world in need. We live with fast-moving changes. We cannot predict what is next or what that change may look like, but we live in hope. Just as we belong to one body in Christ, we belong to each other. Inspired by the gospel, we will choose to live and work together for the sake of the world. Thank you. I think that as we continue, each year the North Carolina Synod Endowment Fund disperses funds to be used by whichever agency is leading a Synod-wide campaign. In 2021, we celebrated the launch of the LSC Be the Light campaign. This year, we are excited to present LSC with a check for $18,689 for their campaign. And I welcome to the stage Ted Goins, my friend, my buddy, president of Lutheran Services Carolinas. Ted, we are grateful for the work you do on our behalf and for the lunch that you're providing today.
Can I get a few minutes?
Yes, you do.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Diana and Bishop. All of you, thank you for the generosity of the Synod. Your light is shining so bright, I too had to wear my glasses. The only problem is they're not prescription. And to see my couple of notes, Tammy said I had 5 minutes. I'm going to take 2.5 and give you a few back. But thank you for your generosity. Please make sure you do join us for lunch today to learn a lot more about the Be the Light campaign. And your light is shining bright. And thank you for this check today for helping us to make that light shine all over the Synod. You know, after a slow COVID start, 34 congregations have already joined our efforts to date, with many more joining in the next couple of months. Congregations alone have already raised over $630,000, discovering abundance for their congregations and for Lutheran Services Carolinas. As a matter of fact, Emily Dubé and Heidi Rixman that work with us are providing a congregational Be the Light training on Saturday, tomorrow. There's always room if somebody's interested in joining that. I have never been more proud to be a Lutheran. For all of our warts and sins and problems, I've never been more proud to be a Lutheran, and to be a Lutheran when the need is greatest. And we continue to be the church together. You know, people deserve justice. They deserve abundant life, abundant living. That's been our vision statement for now over 60 years. You know, foster children are aging out and likely to become homeless or pregnant or incarcerated. That's a terrible outcome for society. It's a horrible outcome for that foster child. You all are addressing that. Our parents and grandparents deserve love and care, deserve a place to live. You all are addressing that. People with developmental disabilities and traumatic brain injury deserve a home, not an institution. You are addressing that. Around the world, people are being threatened with death and persecution. Most recently from the Taliban, now Russia also. You are addressing that. You know, when Bishop Tim reached out to let us know of his idea for this challenge, it was just perfect. Our plan synced up perfectly with his and your desire to serve. It's almost like God was involved. Your opportunities to serve are broadening beyond our longtime Raleigh office, as Bishop Tim mentioned. LSC is applying to expand our New Americans program for refugee resettlement with offices in Wilmington and Salisbury. And from Salisbury, and that was partly chosen because we can serve in that 100 miles. That's from Greensboro to the Gaston, Mecklenburg County area. We were allowed to open an office in Asheville just to serve Afghan refugees. That was our start. And now we've been given permission to use that for Ukrainian refugees also. And St. Mark's, again, has been such a strong partner. We're also applying to convert the Asheville office into a full refugee office this year also. So please pray for those 3 applications that we have into the federal government. That's a difficult process. Pray for us, and certainly pray for Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Services, our national partner in refugee resettlement work. And I hope you can join our partner LIRS and LSC this afternoon to learn more about the work we're doing in the Carolinas in one of the breakout sessions this afternoon. So I'll see you at lunch, and thank you again for walking with us on this journey. Thank you.
We have lots and lots of letters, LIRS. In case you don't know, Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service, a big, big thing nationwide and worldwide. And so if you haven't been supportive of that, they do partner so much with Lutheran Services Carolinas. Yesterday, our time with Jacqueline Bussey was so very meaningful. I mentioned, like, it's not just the squirrely factor, but it's just the tenderness factor, I think, where we all kind of find ourselves for so many different reasons. And clearly, so much of what we feel and have felt, I believe, is grief. Could go on with a whole pastoral care 101.